like to bring it order, please. Roll call. In accordance with Public Law 231, notice of this meeting was provided to the press to Kermit, the Galloway Township Municipal Building on January 23rd, 2019. There's no minutes for approval tonight. Reading communications.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Vice President Days. We do not have any communications this evening.
Presentations.
Yes, it is my pleasure to welcome back our BTMS Student Council President, Olivia Vinelli. Welcome, Olivia.
I'm Olivia Vinelli, the Student Council President, and Student Council has participated in many events this year.
Mrs. Avery will get you my. There you go.
We helped out at the 7th grade orientation, attended the 9/11 ceremony, facilitated the veterans and Galloway veterans ceremony. We sold some improvements in October and donated millions of money to the Children's Club. We held a Thanksgiving food drive for Beacon Church, volunteered at Johnny's Run, worked with the police department for the Smithville Community Barbecue, made Human Rights Day presentations, State House, learned how to build in the law, and we had a Dr. Martin Luther King essay contest. We presented for the South Jersey African American Heritage Museum. We held a clothing drive in the Project Dr. Beacon with 4 Latinos, and we participated in Galloway Make a Difference Day, organized the Congressman Jefferson G. Student Town Hall, and volunteered for community food bank each day. And May 23rd, we'll have presentations for the GTMS Members Unite this Thursday, 6 p.m., and we'll be presenting for the Veterans United Military Memorial June 3rd.
Olivia, thank you for sharing that. Student Council has certainly been busy doing many great things. The next series of presentations are so positive, which will be recognizing students for a variety of different accomplishments. So what I want to do is go over the general procedure for us doing that before we get to each of the groups. So for each category, I will invite any administrators from that school, as well as any of the staff that are directly involved in that program, to meet me at the microphone. And this is the important part for the students. Someone from your school will explain your activity, and then they will call your name. When you hear your name called, Vice President Days and myself, plus who's ever here from your school, will be over there near the microphone. We ask that you come up and shake hands. Vice President Days or someone will give you your certificate, and then we ask you to get in this empty section here, because we'd like to take your picture, and families are certainly welcome to take pictures as well. And then we'll repeat that process for each of the wonderful awards that we are honoring tonight. Our first category is students who participated in the LPGA Classic Ticket Design Contest. And this is something that goes out to all schools in the area. And we are very proud that we have 2 winners from Arthur Brand. So if I could invite, is anyone from Brand tonight? Mrs. Kane, please come up and join us. Perfect, one of our physical education help teachers and
offered it to the children to submit drawings that were given to us, a background drawing, and they had to fill it in, and we submitted it along with Egg Harbor Township. And out of 1,900 students, 4 were selected, and 2 of those were from Arthur Ram. And the drawings are on each day of the event ticket for the LPGA. 4 drawings, and I wish I had drawn a picture of the drawings.
We'll have to get them and post them.
But they were very, very interesting. And the children who won each received a laptop computer. Yes. And our school, because we had 2 students who won, for each student there were $500 in box top. I'm not real familiar with that. I'm not a homeroom teacher. So our school received $1,000 for also winning. The 2 students happen to be 2nd grader Yasmin Caldwell and 5th grader Raj Lua. I don't know if...
Well, let's talk.
So if any of you attend the LPGA, on your entry ticket, if you look, it could be one of the 2 students. I think their names are at the bottom besides the drawing. So thank you.
Mrs. Kane, thank you for being here and for getting those certificates to the students. Our next category is, we have a lot of students who do wonderful things to volunteer in the community. And one of those groups are members of GTMS Student Council who volunteer at the Community Food Bank of New Jersey, which is located in Egg Harbor Township. So if I could ask administrators, I believe I saw Mrs. Junker, and I'm not sure if Mr. Crewmaker is here this evening. If so, please come on up and let's recognize these students. Mr. Crewmaker, you are welcome to share anything if you'd like. Why don't you call the students' names? I just need to stop when you're done.
All right, usually we've been, usually part of our program is every year we try to at least do 8 to 12 hours of service work at the community food bank. So in this particular event that we did, we had, I believe, 6 volunteers that are being recognized tonight. First of which is Emma Brother.
We'll get someone to join you, so you're not there right now.
Next is Bart Shaw. Bart. Next is Andrew Crewmaker.
It feels probably longer than it is when everybody's watching. Great job.
Next, we have Christine Zhang. Phoebe Kirschenblatt. And last but not least, we have Samira Hussain.
All right, if I could ask you folks to hold it, yeah, that's good, so we can see your certificate and please stand with that. Mr. Rocky is taking a picture, and again, family members are welcome to take a picture too. Galloway, smiles around. Again, thank you to our student council. The next group we're honoring, these students, with their teachers/coaches, participated in an event that we have never done before. Many of you are familiar with the term STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. And we are very proud to say, in the very first time we ever had students compete, we had a group, two groups, do a phenomenal job. So I'd like to invite any administrators from Rowan Rogers. And I also know we have, I've seen Mr. Dunn, I'm not sure if Mrs. Fox was able, oh, she is. Please come on down. And certainly you are welcome to tell a little bit more about what this challenge was than my will be.
Steam Tank is actually sponsored by the New Jersey School Board Association and the U.S. Army. We were excited to take part in it. It's a statewide competition based regionally. It is based on the show Shark Tank, in which teams are asked to invent something new, modify an existing product, or identify a real-world problem that needs a resolution. After months of researching, the first step was to decide on the standout idea of the pitch. The ice wiper and the no stress station were born. These innovations were chosen amongst hundreds of entries to move on to the regional competition in Blackwood at the Army Reserve Center on March 22nd. At this point, teams had a few weeks to prepare a 3-minute presentation. They had several opportunities to practice in front of a panel of judges and make changes when necessary. The students worked extremely hard and stayed enthusiastic about their products throughout the process. Each team was well prepared with a Google Slides presentation, props, and plenty of research to back up their ideas. On the big day, they successfully pitched their products in a professional manner, garnering lots of attention and praise. Although they were not chosen as one of the teams to move forward, we couldn't be prouder of how they represented Galloway. And I will say one thing, this process I want to speak, but she went to Safe Flight Auto Glass and got a windshield donated for our group. And after being told no for about an hour, she went home with one in the back of her car. So that was some serious dedication. I told her she had no shot, and she got it, and it was pretty cool to roll into the competition with a full-size car windshield, so it was pretty awesome. So we'd like to bring the kids up. All right, we're going to start with the no stress station. This is basically a station where students could go to the back of the room who were being stressed out by testing or something else, and there was a variety of activities that they could take part in to help them ease that anxiety. So we have Yusuf Abdallah. Kira Stanel. Akashi Patel. And Manya Sinasia. And the ice wiper. The ice wiper was basically an attachment for your regular, everyday wipers that would scrape the ice off. So you put that on instead of having to start your car and, cause CO2 and all that stuff. They did all kinds of great research on that. Brielle Coltrell.
Clint Maroon. Jacob Days. And Madison Gunn.
Look, you're a problem solver, so if you're a little bit forward, you're going to $2.
At least check it out.
Tighten it up, tighten it up. Keep going. Yeah, if somebody is shorter than you, that comes in the water. So you're a problem solver. Already accurate. And one and hold it, I have lots of cameras. Few more. And congratulations to the teacher and And now we move into the performing arts area, and our next category is students who auditioned for and were accepted into the All South Jersey Honors Chorus. And I know I saw Mr. Little, the choral director, and Dr. Moore, you need to walk back one up. And Mr. Little, would you like to explain what this is?
Alright, so this event occurred back in March, right at the beginning of the Music Next Month, and the students first auditioned at their school level. So for the 6th graders, they auditioned at Roland Rogers. If they passed that, we could only take up to 6, and there were about 15 to 20 auditions. So already they were on their way to success. But the event is a one-day festival that's held at Washington Township High School up in Sewell, New Jersey. About 200 plus students from all the other schools in South Jersey are participating in this as part of the All South Jersey Chorus Teachers Association. So they were prepared on their own with minimal help from me, about 7 additional pieces that are of middle school caliber. These pieces generally are sung in different languages other than English as well. Some of the languages they had to sing in were Swahili, Spanish, and Arabic. They also were challenged again on the middle school level, where not only were they singing in unison, but also in 2- and 3-part harmony. This year actually featured a guest conductor, as it always does. But this year's was an internationally renowned choral composer named Jim Poulos. He's worked throughout the world, and including some names that you might know. He's worked with like Aretha Franklin, Celine Dion, Beyonce, Snoop Dogg, a variety of symphonies. His music has been featured at the Beijing Olympics, in 2008 presidential inauguration, so it's a big deal. And on top of all that, he wrote a piece we commissioned for him that was a world premiere that these students got to participate in performing.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, students who participated in this were Nima Abdallah, Stefano Fabrice, Kanaya Johnson, Jared Pham, and David Shevman.
I think there's more of us than that. Where's Brown? And next, we move to the instrumental side of music. And we have students from Arthur Brand and Smithville Elementary Schools who auditioned and were selected for the All-South Jersey Elementary Honors Band. And I believe I saw Mrs. Cunningham, who's band director from Arthur Brand. And it's hard to use this word, retired band director. We were very pleased to have come back and serve as a sub while Mrs. Rohali was out, Mr. Bendenbach. And we have any administrators from Rand or Smithville. Would you please see me? All right. So one of you, if you'll just tell a little bit more.
So every year, we have the opportunity to nominate some of our hardest working students to participate in the Elementary Honors Band Festival. There are 3 bands and students from all over southern New Jersey have the opportunity to participate. And so from Arthur Brand, we had 5 students participate. And I think that's pretty good. And from Smithville, there were 4 students participate. So from Arthur Brand, Andrea Francisco. Paige Krakowicki, and Jacob Krasky.
These students from Smithville, Jolie Parrish. Emma Crowley. Julia Hartman. And Shannon Powers.
All right, Mr. Little put me on the spot. So Mr. Little and I actually did one of the bands together, one of the 3. So Mr. Little managed for me and I conducted one. So he was just like, you have to say it while you're here. So thanks, Mr. Little.
And congratulations. So this concludes all of the wonderful presentations this evening, and we're so proud that we see students achieving and excelling in so many areas. We thank the staff members who work with them, and certainly all the parents for your support and for being here this evening. If you look at your agenda, the next presentation is the district configuration study update. You are encouraged to attend and stay for that and even the rest of the board meeting. I will say if you don't plan to stay for the presentation now, we're going to take a little mini break if anyone does not plan to stay.
Because that's not sit there and read a book and everything's done. No, I bet that out.
Good evening again, everyone. For those of you that were here on May 6th, for the most part, the presentation is the same. Based on feedback from some of the members of the public that spoke at the microphone, as well as from the committee members and board members, there are some, I will call them additions and refinements to the presentation. If you did not pick up the handout on your way in, I don't know if there's any left, but I would ask if sharing is necessary somewhere. Thank you so much. If you did not get the handout is available up on the small table there. So, as you can see on the screen, this presentation was first done at the May 6th meeting and is being repeated this evening. So, this first slide talks about why was this study even done. And I will tell you I am not going to read slides to you, but will highlight some key points. So our district, and with the support of the board, we tried to maintain good class size. So in trying to do that, what we were finding was there were times where we wanted to add homerooms to keep that good class size, but we were faced with space issues. Was there a classroom? Did another program end up in a non-traditional classroom space, or a teacher moving from room to room using a cart to transport materials? Because of that, we went to the board, and that means Mrs. Nixon, our school business administrator, and myself, on behalf of the administrative team, saying, could we add a relocatable? Could we do some type of construction? And one example was there was a room at Smithfield School that was 2 small instructional rooms. We had the wall taken down to make it one larger instructional space. So, before taking this type of step, the board directed, let's study if there is a way to solve these space issues through some other means. And so if you look at this box, this kind of summarizes the rationale for the study. Anywhere in the presentation that you see this shade of blue, that means that is language or a whole slide that is different tonight than when the presentation was done on May 6th. So, the first phase was during the 17-18 school year, and this was done at the district level and involved a committee of administrators, and staff members in certain categories were included, and you'll see that slide of committee members in a moment. In this group, we studied different scenarios. We brainstormed as many things as we could think of. We analyzed the demographics. We looked at data. We discussed how these different scenarios might impact things like school culture, instruction. We looked at literature in different professional journals, research studies about school configuration. We also talked about the different facilities, the different school buildings themselves, mainly looking at the 4 elementary schools and what were the strengths of those schools, or what concerns were there, if any. For example, we looked at the differences. I'll just use Arthur Brand as an example because this is a recurring theme. Arthur Brand does not have a stage. The core spaces tend to be smaller. So, from this work, we then identified scenarios that we felt were viable for further study. The Board of Education members joined this committee. A report was shared with the full board, and it was determined that a stakeholder committee should be created. I will briefly show you in phase 1. Here are the individuals that were part of this phase 1 committee. So you see different types of administrators. Some of those folks are here this evening. Our person who oversees student data, Mrs. Warren, is here tonight. We have our former retired transportation coordinator was originally on the committee, and I will say our current transportation coordinator is here as well, Mrs. Kaufman. We also had 2 current board members join us as part of this phase 1 committee. So one of the things I mentioned was looking at the professional literature. And if you've ever looked at research on a topic, you will find that you very often will get different opinions. Research to support whatever you're looking for. But we did see some things that said to us there were things that needed to be studied when you're looking at school configuration. So this particular article names 9 factors that should be considered when you're looking at what grade span is in a school. And you can see there's all different things. It's everything from length of travel to the students, how it might affect achievement, how many transitions, looking at parental involvement, all those different kinds of things. We found another article very similar. What questions should you be asking? And what stood out between these 2 particular articles was they really were looking at the same kinds of things. So when we were working as an administrative group, and then when we were working with the larger stakeholder committee, these were the types of issues we discussed, and were kind of guiding questions for our work. This now gets into some of the research that we saw about the configuration, the grade span, if you will, itself. So you see, changing schools less frequently or changing at an earlier grade, a smaller size of within the school, stability of the peers. So even if the children move, they move together. When they looked at data on performance, these were some of the factors that they saw as positive. It then also, in one of the studies, says be careful when you're looking at a study, doesn't apply to every setting. So a study may have been done in the urban setting, doesn't apply equally to the suburban setting. It may have been done with small schools, doesn't apply to larger schools. There were a number of things related to the middle school. And should middle school, that 6-8, remain? Should we go back to K-8, which were prevalent many decades ago? And there was a lot of mixed research on this particular topic, including, is middle school a true middle school, or does it just have that in its name? And so, for example, GTMS has many of the reflections of a true middle school. A 7th grade house and 8th grade house. Teams that create smaller schools within a larger school. This was one of the quotes that stood out, that quality is more about the programs and practices than the configuration itself. So, at the end of phase 1, I mentioned that we identified scenarios that were considered to be viable and scenarios that were not considered to be viable. So on the left, you see what was considered to be viable. Looking at taking the 4 elementary schools and making them 2K3 and 246, or taking the 4 elementary schools and making one of them 5-6 and the other 3K4. Scenarios that we did not identify for further study. The first one was full redistricting to create neighborhood schools. And you may or may not know, and I'll show you a map in a moment, because Galloway is 92 square miles and there are very rural parts and more dense parts and sections in between, when we draw attendance zones, you may have students coming all school with children who live very close to that school. When we tried to make those attendance zones contiguous or closer, it did not work. We ended up with way too many children in one school, and it also threw off many of our balances looking at different subgroups. We looked at minor redistricting. Could we move a few streets one way or another in drawing our attendance zones? That tended to just move the problem from one building to another. We also looked at, could we make GTMS a 6-8 middle school? And with the facility as it is, the belief was that did not work. Although you have nice sized court facilities, the design of the building is that two-house concept. In looking at team size and class size, that was not seen as a viable solution. Just to do a reminder again, I'm not going to read this to you. In the history of Galloway Township, there have been many different configurations. There have been K-8 schools. There have been small schools, larger schools. Arthur Rand, when it used to be the middle school, went through many different changes, 5-8, 6-8, 7-8. For many years, Galloway did not have full-day kindergarten. When GTMS was built, one of the things that helped pass the referendum for this school was the fact that Arthur Green could become an elementary school. We also had Oceanville and Pomona, and we were able to turn those schools at the time into kindergarten centers, gaining full-day kindergarten. Something that every community does not have, that because of that positive referendum, we were able to do that at the time. So right now, we have Pomona as a preschool. We have our 4 elementary schools that are K-6, and sometimes have a preschool class. We have GTMS, which is 7 and 8. Oceanville is our facilities. Kelowna and South Egg Harbor, those properties are still owned by the district. The buildings no longer exist. Maybe you're one of the folks who got a brick from one of those schools. And then the district, the board also owns a never-used property on Jim Leeds Road. Enrollment. Enrollment has varied over the years, and because every child comes to the middle school, one of the ways we can show you the changes in that enrollment is by looking at the middle school. So in 1994, there were about 750 students in grades 7 and 8, and that was at Arthur Rand. And by the year 2000, there were nearly 1,000 students in those two same grade levels. The reason this building exists. And so when we moved out of Arthur Rand, we were also using Oceanville for the middle school. Here at GTMS, we came, and in the early years, it actually crossed that 1,000-student mark at one time. I don't think I need to explain to anyone that the population in our community has developed. The casinos being open are what impacted Galloway in terms of growth, and the closing and difficulties that impacted our economy as related to the casino have been the major factor in the decline. So as the population decreased, because today we're back down into the 700s, as I mentioned, Kelowna and South Acre were closed and then raised. Pomona became the preschool. Oceanville is for facilities and food service. At the same time, while the overall population declined, we've had expansion or addition of programs for different reasons, including special ed and meeting restrictive environment as much as possible, keeping our special needs children in our school district. We also have spaces being utilized differently for different programs. So with some buildings changing their use, some buildings no longer existing, although we have fewer students across the district, we also are still experiencing some space issues, and that varies by the school, Arthur Rand being the place that happens most often, and then the other buildings it varies. So just to show you, these are where the lines are currently drawn. So where you see green, that is Arthur Rand. They are the Arthur Rand attendance zones. Where you see orange, that is Reed's. Where you see pink, some might call it purple or lilac, whatever you choose, that is Roland. So you see some contiguous pieces and not. And then where you see blue, that is Smithville. So again, because of the different density of population in different areas of Galloway, you have some where there's more contiguous and some where there are wide gaps in those attendance zones. That's just a little neater picture of those school attendance zones. This was a point in time for the committee's work that shows you the total enrollment at each school. We then look at that by grade level, and Rand is in red, Reeves is in green, Roland is in yellow, and Smithville is in blue. And obviously, some of the schools have a larger population than other schools. This breaks down that same information by ethnicity. We then look at economically disadvantaged, and at the bottom, as it says, if a family qualifies for free or reduced meals, that is what the definition of economically disadvantaged is. And for the purpose of this slide, we not only showed the percentage of students currently qualifying in that category, but also showed some that prior, that were at one point but are no longer. We then looked at special education, and this is by the school of attendance. So in blue, you see the percentage of special ed children at that school, and then in red, you see non-special ed. And again, this is by the school of attendance, and I need to pause here. For in-class support, in-class resource, pull-out resource, those kinds of programs and services exist at every school. For our self-contained programs, they tend to be concentrated in certain schools because there aren't as many children in every program, and allows us to better service them that way. So right now, Roland has the smallest overall population, but they have the majority of our LLD self-contained classes. And so when you have a self-contained special ed classroom, there are not as many children in that room. So there might only be 12 children in that full-size classroom. So when you're using rooms that way, you have fewer children in the building. Here we have ESL, and again we've given you current and former, and these are percentages, or no, I'm sorry, these are numbers. I see every time I do this, Mrs. Natalie shakes her head, she's my data expert. These are numbers of children, and again we gave former and current. And again, at a moment in time, this was our average class size. So one of the things we try to do is when we look at a grade level, as much as possible, have some level of equity or consistency across all schools. That is challenging for a number of reasons. One of them is space. One of them is that we plan at budget time, and we still have a fairly transient population. It can change by the school opens, time school opens. And there have been times where, as we're watching enrollment, students transferring out and coming in over the summer, we've added a homeroom in August, the very beginning of September. We've also had the occasion, and this happened at Arthur Rand School this year, where we had a spike in the grade level. There was nowhere to add a room. So we added some part-time classroom assistants to support those classes. So, that's all about phase one. Phase two occurred this year. We started sometime after winter break. And so again, as an administrative team, talked to the board, and we agreed that it needed to be a representative stakeholder committee. An invitation was sent to all those different categories: staff, parents, community members. As you can see, on February 12th, anyone who wanted to attend was invited, and we had a wonderful turnout that evening. Anyone who attended that February 12th meeting was invited to attend the to join the committee. So if you took the time to come out, you were invited to join. 65 people said yes to that. And that's tremendous. They represented every school, parents, staff members that are also parents, and of course there were administrators and certain district staff members as well. That committee met 4 times in the evening, and every week we delved further into data and had discussions about the pros and cons of the different scenarios. What would work? Gee, the data looks better, but are there things that we don't like about that different scenario? Or this scenario has potential, but what would it take to make it work? I also talked twice to student council and got some student input about that. A number of the students did write me letters or emails, and interestingly enough, just like the adults, there were a lot of different opinions about what to do. So we now have the Phase 2 committee. If you are here, a member of either committee, well, please wave. I know, I asked people to stand up last time, and I got almost no one to stand up. Thank you for being here again this evening. So, what did this committee do? Well, we looked at that current data I showed you quickly and dove into that. Let's make sure we understand what do the demographics look like right now in our current configuration. What is that enrollment class size? The committee members were given floor plans of the school along with a list of how the rooms were used. So that when we're talking about the scenarios, you're able to see, here's what we look like now, and then let's delve into these different scenarios. So if you look on the right, the scenarios that were brainstormed and considered viable and studied by that Phase 1 committee, they were studied in great detail during Phase 2. And you can see the different pairings of K, 3, 4, 6, and the different pairings of K, 4, 5, 6. From the committee, the question came, well, if you can look at K, 4, 5, 6, can't you look at K, 1, 2, 6? So those scenarios in different combinations were studied as well. And as I have noted here, this type of data was provided for every one of these scenarios. And the committee could go back and look at those school maps and room usage as they talked about the different scenarios. So, once we spent time doing all this studying, a question was posed to the committee. You've studied 6 scenarios. If you had to identify the most viable one, which one would it be? And you notice I have in parentheses, even if reconfiguration of grade span isn't your first choice. If you had to pick one, which one would it be? And as we ran the entire committee, we worked in small groups and then reported out to the group as a whole. There were posters all over the wall that were turned into notes. So, in answering the question, if I had to pick one of these, which one it would be? The one that was the consensus from the committee was looking at K3, 4, 6. As you can see along with that, there was a whole list of what are the positives about that scenario and what are the questions and concerns. And one of the things you'll see as I work my way through the presentation, and I'll say this now and I'll say it again, what the board has decided this year is not the answer to the bigger question, but it's what will the next step be. So when we look particularly at the questions and concerns, if the board wants us to further done. So, while I kind of was a mosey around person, visiting the groups, each committee had a combination of staff and parents, each subcommittee, a subgroup, and there were also administrators. One of the things that we repeatedly heard, well, other than reconfiguration, are there other things we can do to answer that question? Remember, I'm going to go back to the question. There are times when we're running out of space. There are spaces that are not the same in one school and another, and how is that impacting things? So the committee member comments indicated they wanted to share with the board other ideas. So again, working in small groups and reporting out to the committee of the whole, there was brainstorming. And here are the ideas, along again with the pros and cons of the different ideas. One of them was one of the ideas that we originally talked to the board about. Can we get relocatable classrooms at the schools where we're having these space issues? And you see positives and concerns. One of the things that was mentioned last time, and you now see this additional comment, we were able to find out every county has a county office of education, and the executive business administrator is the person who oversees facilities. And I want to thank Mrs. Nixon for reaching out to Mrs. Semino, who is our executive county business administrator. The board could apply to the Department of Ed for relocatables. If you are making that application, included in the application, you need to have a plan of what the permanent solution is. And so when the state considers whether it will approve this, they're looking at that as a piece of it as well. One of the other ideas from the committee was to keep the current configuration and do some additions. So a more permanent version of the relocatables. Can we put an addition on any of the schools? And so again, pros and cons. Obviously, when we're keeping the configuration the same, a lot of the positives on the previous slide, because it's keeping the configuration the same, and this next slide are the same. Some of the questions and concerns are also the same. Any type of construction you do, whether you're putting a relocatable or an addition, has an entire process related to approvals. Obviously, it also costs money. One of the other ideas was to build an addition here on GTMS so that the 6th grade could be added to this school. And again, a lot of positives. Obviously, in this scenario, we would open up space at all the elementary schools without doing construction there, because you'd be taking the 6th grade out. At the same time, there were some questions and concerns raised. One of them was, and I remember a board member mentioning at this last meeting, was what the total enrollment would be, even if 6th graders had their own wing and used the core facilities, along with the other grade levels. The next option was, you own this piece of land, build us a new school, an early childhood center. Obviously, pros and cons. Tailored design for those grade levels, opens the space, but then all the concerns, funding, construction processes, adding transition, etc. Another option was also about building a new school with the suggestion, build a pre-K 6. So you'll gain some of that preschool space and give us a new building. And again, you'll see positives and questions, concerns. So, at the last meeting, one of the questions was asked, how do the committee members rank these different options? So I sent a follow-up survey to the committee members. And when I put this presentation together on Friday, 55 of the 63 members responded. Mrs. Nixon and I did not respond to the survey. I do not know who the 55 people are because you're not asked your name. So on the left, you see the results. And so 4 options were given to the committee. K3, 4, 6 reconfiguration, K6 with the relocatables, K6 with the additions, K5 with the middle school addition 6 to 8. As I have stated up here, I did not include build a new school choices because at the prior meeting, the very clear feedback from the board was we do not have the money to do that. A new school would be $30 or more million, nor are we in the economic climate for that. So the 4, based on that feedback from last time, everyone was asked to rank them. What is your first choice, your second choice, your third choice, and your fourth choice? So this is the order that the choices were listed, and these were the percentages of those 55 people who responded and how they ranked them. Obviously, you can read and analyze that yourself, but on the right side, I have some key points. So K5 with the middle school addition received the highest percentage of first choice responses at 40%. It also received the second highest number of second choice responses at 25.5%. Only second to K3, 4, 6. So it was the highest vote getter, and again, this is not a vote that answers the question, but rather additional input. But it was also one that other people had a great concern about. K6 with relocatables had the second highest percentage of first choice votes. K3, 4, 6 received the lowest percentage of first choice votes and the highest of fourth choice votes. Then in this box, everyone doesn't do this, but very often, whether we're looking, I'll give an example, when we look at test data, we very often, and the state does this, they'll add 2 of them together, and that creates passing. So very often when you look at survey data, you have this split down the middle, the first and second and the third and fourth. So when we add together those first and second choices together, K6 with additions, actually, when you add these 2 together, has the highest by a slight percentage number of first choice votes. When you add those together, K6 with relocatables has the second highest. Middle school, which had the highest percentage of first choice, when you add first choice, second choice together, drops to the third choice, and nothing changes about K3, 4, 6. That, no surprise when you look at the data up here, when added together, that was the first choice. So this was another step that was added after the last meeting to allow the committee members to say, all right, I told you that this was my first choice from this one study, but here's my ranking from the other ideas of the committee members. So, what are the next steps? This year is to complete phase 2. When I am done presenting, the board members will have a chance for comments and questions, as will the public. No decision is being made tonight, but the goal is for the board to decide next steps. Next steps, not the final answer by the end of this school year. We would then move into phase 3. Phase 3 depends on what the board gives us the direction to do. If any kind of change is going to be made, 2020-2021 would be the earliest. So, depending on what the board says, what might happen in phase 3? One of the things we talked about is getting a formal demographic study, looking at the different scenarios, or if the board says study this one and this one, what would the facility needs be, and what would the projected costs of those facilities needs be? How does this impact transportation? Not just in the ability for it to be done, but in what that might cost. How would this affect staffing? Any type of change. We would need to look at special ed program, what it looks like and what it will be next year in 1920, moving that forward. Again, depending on what we are asked to study, how does that impact preschool? How does that impact the master's schedule? And certainly, depending on what the board asks us to do, to returning and reconvening that stakeholder committee to provide them with that new information. So, I'm going to review this now. Again, I'm not going to read it to you. But when we do open it up to public comment, there is board policy on that. And this is done to have it completed in an organized and respectful manner. At the podium here, there is a document that we ask that you print, sign in your name and other information. You do need to give your name verbally, and whether you're a Galloway resident or not, where you live. And then each person is limited to 5 minutes, and that is to make sure that everyone who has an opportunity has a chance to speak. And again, I'm not going to read that all to you. So, I do again have to offer tremendous thanks and compliments to the stakeholder committee. These folks gave up a lot of hours at the meetings and in between the meetings, and they did a tremendous job of asking questions and giving input. I also want to thank everyone who took the time to come out tonight. After this evening, we will continue to provide updates, email, website, hard copies, Facebook, and certainly anyone who wants to speak to me personally about this, you can email or call. And one of the things I encourage people to do is, people start giving opinions and ideas, especially in the world of social media. Everything that's written somewhere may not be accurate. So I really encourage you to come to district sources for your information, or certainly we have a lot of great committee members. So with that said, I'm going to take this down and return.
Any board comments or questions?
I'm really grateful for this new slide with the survey results from the committee. And more comment, it kind of looks like we might end up going with case 6 with additions, which is kind of where we were before we went into all this, but I don't think this was a waste because we know a lot more now than we did before, which makes those expenditures on additions smart purchases instead of potentially wasteful.
What do we mean by additions? You mean classroom additions? You mean relocatable additions? Like what exactly does that mean?
Well, relocatables are exactly what we said.
Okay. So
Classrooms.
meaning like a construction
Addition means a construction addition. Yes.
on the 4 elementary buildings. Well, we don't know that.
I do not believe it would be necessary at all for Mrs. Avery. Mrs. Nixon and I have discussed this extensively from talking to committee members. Rand would be the initial focus. That is the school that is experiencing the greatest pressure. And one of the reasons for that is, of the 4, it's the oldest. There's no stage, so that's the school that we would look at first.
And with regard to relocating, where the information is things that we got from the county superintendent's office, would the BOE be looking at us to say our permanent plan is to build, or is our permanent plan to wait until the levels of population
At this time, we would be committing to construction, but we would also add the additional information that we're waiting to see if enrollment continues to show a decline.
I prefer to hear what the public has to say, but at least we have to do a 5-year demographic study. We need to know what the line worse the last couple of years, and what's the projections for the next 5 years, grades, K and 8. And I think we also need to know the original capacity of the buildings that we have and what we are using now. For example, Arthur ran that 3 classrooms total by the time we were done, but if there are 4 or 5 rooms that are now doubled up because of whatever, that cuts down on their usable classroom. So I think we need that information too.
Sure, fellow board members can tell already, I'm a very data-oriented person. So I would definitely support what you're saying, John. I think doing some type of formal demographic study where we look to see where is this district going to be in the next 5 to 10 years is essential. Not only for this, but I think just planning overall in general. I think it would provide a lot of useful information that could be used for decision making.
Also look at any change that can be within schools, South Park, for example. Check all that out first.
What's the cost of a study like that?
Not as part of study, not the demographic.
Typically, it's $1,000 to $2,000.
Anyone else on the board? Adam?
I just have a few comments. The first thing I just wanted to say was that the purpose of this study, or the committee, the stakeholders, was to make better use of our existing space. Okay, personally, from a personal standpoint, I don't like the fact that the preschool is located in several different places, at least I think 5, the preschool building and then various other campuses. I don't necessarily like the fact that teachers are sometimes on carts and don't have classrooms, because I think that does not promote quality instruction. I believe the Smithville music program is on the stage. I'm not sure about that, but it's so. Right, so I mean, I think teachers need to have classrooms, not be on carts, not be in, cramped locations, et cetera, so on. And I think the reason why we're in this particular situation is because even though the population seems to be stable, the kinds of students that we have has changed. And now we have certain special ed obligations. We have different kinds of students with different kinds of needs, and a normal sized classroom may be a classroom for 12 and not for 24, and that, creates a space issue. So, just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Anyone else on the board? Okay, we'll open up to the public. Please come up, sign your name, and give yourself 5 minutes. And any questions you might have, please direct to our superintendent and to the administrator.
Good evening. What I just handed out is a petition that I decided to start following the last meeting. My wife was a member of the committee, and based on just where we were, I thought it was important to get some public input because in speaking to people, I knew there was a lot of support for my personal position, and I wanted to make sure that there was an opportunity to get a little bit of a feel from the public. So as of the start of the meeting today, we have 455 signatures. You'll notice some various cities and things on there. I'm not sure what change.org does with collecting people's locations, but I can attest to many of them are quite off, because many of them are parents and friends of mine who are listed as Atlantic City and Pleasantville and even Jamaica. So I have no idea how that happened. But the petition states, we, the undersigned parents, guardians, family members, staff, and taxpayers of Galloway, would prefer for our elementary schools to remain in current K-6 configuration. We believe other options, such as redistricting, should be explored to deal with the issues of uneven enrollment and space. Reconfiguration is unlikely to solve these issues alone and will significantly affect the sense of community, culture, and tradition that our schools currently have and would take years to rebuild. There are many other concerns, including busing, siblings, and parent involvement. The current configuration is why many families choose to live in Galloway in the first place, and it has been successful for decades. I'd also like to share my own personal, this is apart from the petition, I do not speak for the group here, but just for those who don't know me, I've been employed by the district for the past 17 years in different roles, but they've all been at Roland Rogers. 6 years ago, my daughter started kindergarten there, and my son started 2 years ago. My wife, Nicole, who grew up in Galloway and attended Roland, is a proud FSA member. I've been blessed with the unique opportunity to not only love where I work, but also to be able to share that every day with my family. To anyone on the outside of our elementary schools, they may simply be buildings. But to the students, parents, guardians, and staff, they're much more. They're a family. They're a home. A place where students spend more awake hours between September and June than anywhere else. And for 7 of the most important years of the student's life, they can learn, grow, and build relationships in a place they feel comfortable. A place to call their school home. Our kids are proud bulldogs, dolphins, dragons, and tigers. Our schools are a place where 6th graders regularly visit their kindergarten teachers for a smile and a hug they might desperately need. Our schools are a place where kindergartners go to the computer lab with 6th graders, not only to learn about code, but to also meet a new big buddy. Our schools are a place where 5 through 12-year-olds regularly come together to celebrate successes such as charity fundraisers, assemblies, and FSA events. Our schools are a place where siblings walk in together each morning and walk out together each afternoon. In a day when we can all agree the world is forcing our kids to grow up far too fast, please don't underestimate the value of a K-6 elementary school. I started looking for research that shows that this model is best, but I stopped myself when I realized there was no need to do that. Our elementary schools have proven for many years that this works for Galloway's children and families. And while I understand the temptation to look at neighboring districts and their configurations for comparison, I would argue that there's no reason to. We already have the best students, parents, guardians, staff, administration, and Board of Education. I'm not saying that there aren't other effective ways to configure our schools. I just believe we already have what works best for Galloway. Change always brings some risk with it, and in this case, we risk losing the sense of community, culture, and tradition that has taken years to create, and it will take years to rebuild. The question is that a risk worth taking? Our 4 equal yet unique elementary schools serve not only our students well, but also our community. They are a part of Galloway's identity and the reason many of us choose to raise our families here. I understand the need to make sure our facilities meet the needs of our students. I just ask that you consider the needs that are already being met by these 4 amazing schools. Please consider alternatives that will have a less dramatic effect on our students. Please don't try to fix what truly isn't broken. And just one question. First of all, the committee did an awesome job. My wife spent a lot of time, and I really credit the committee for doing that. One question I have, though, based on the presentation is, did the committee find that reconfiguring to a K-3, 4 through 6, did that solve the problems? Did that solve the space problems? Was it proven?
When you moved the enrollment up and looked at that, yes, it did create spaces.
Next, I was going to up and state the name, sign in, please.
I just
not just in New Jersey, but New Jersey is one of the highest states, the highest rates of autism, which I think at one time we, right now they're saying, I think it's 1 in 44, but I've heard as low as 1 in 22. So that's pretty significant. In an area like Atlantic County, where you have a lower income, you're also going to see a higher rate of autism than you would in other places. So just something to consider as you're going there when you consider the number of classes that you're going through. That was it. Just a
Thank you. Anyone else? In the public?
I just want to say that I understand that the time constraint.
Say your name, please.
Oh, yeah, sure, I'm sorry, my name is Alexandra Southbury. This has been edited for time, so please bear with me. Good evening, my name is Alexandra Southbury, and I'm a resident of the Township, a mother of a second grader, Roland Rogers, and a pre-K 3 student who is actually on homebound instruction. An executive board member of the Roland Rogers FSA, a member of the District Reconfiguration Committee, and until 3 years ago, when my son was born with medical needs, I was a teacher. Over the past 2 months, I've had the privilege to participate in the reconfiguration study led by Dr. Giaquinto. As a member of the committee, we spent hours poring over information. With an open mind, I began digging deep with one statement at the forefront of my thoughts: show me how this helps children. And when our time in the committee was over, my statement was still the same. I want to be fully transparent that after looking through the numbers and being on the committee, I agree that there is a space problem in our district. I also acknowledge that this problem needs to be addressed. However, reconfiguration creates a multitude of other problems. Where do we house our older students? Is there enough room? Will we still have to build? Where are the bathrooms for younger students? Changing our school's configuration will not put an end to any problem, it will only create more. And the problems that it creates are far more frightening. Several members of the board mentioned that they wanted to use what we had first. And we as a committee members, parents are telling you that we can't. We are telling you that it's not a viable option. They deserve better. And the only rebuttal we heard 2 weeks ago was not of school climate, not of academic achievement, and not of family values. It was about money. And while I'm not naive enough to think that money doesn't matter, my job is to advocate for my children and the children of Galloway Township. The board has a responsibility to be educationally and fiscally sound. However, I challenge the board and the public to rethink fiscally sound, as not spending the least amount of money, but spending it the best way. At the last meeting, I was shocked at how flippant the responses were from the board members. Well, of course we aren't building, we aren't adding on. Seemed to be the resounding comment. And while I'm not sure what the point of the study would be, if every single other option, except for reconfiguration, was automatically off the table, I will edit that we've seen some different discussion this evening. It burns my heart that our ability to spend the least amount of money is an attribute we're more interested in retaining than our reputation of excellence in education. I taught for 4 years at a neighboring district that is divided K1, Q5, and 6-8. In that district, I experienced community disconnect, the shutting out of parents, low school morale, and a non-existent PTA and FSA. This made my expectations low when my daughter started kindergarten in Galloway. When she began at Roland Rogers, I was blown away with what we experienced. We experienced community. This community consisted of teachers like Mr. Dunn, who teaches technology, knowing every parent, child, and sibling, and greeting them by name at parent pickup. And this includes children that haven't even entered our school yet. It was our neighbors, who are older than my daughter, walking her right into class in the mornings when she felt apprehensive. It was joining FSA and meeting parents who had been on that FSA for 12 plus years through all of their children's ages. And the parents on the FSA welcomed me with open arms and helped me learn the ropes to carry on the Roland Rogers Tigers tradition. I look forward to the next 2 years when my special needs son gets the security and joy of walking into school with his sister. I look forward to having my family of 4 unify in our Roland Rogers Tigers spirit wear and not having to choose between schools and events. I look forward to both my children flourishing academically because they don't have to get used to a new school building and staff every 2 years. The student and family experience at our schools is unparalleled. with anything in our area, and it is because of our K-6 configuration. You say make do with what we have, but my son cannot attend Pomona preschool because it is not handicap accessible. He is not ambulatory. Yet this goes on because the district can provide an alternative out-of-district placement. Now, I'll give credit where credit is due, Dr. Baldwin and her team. When they heard that we requested for our son to stay in district because of our admiration of the schools, they worked together so that he would begin his school career at a satellite classroom at Roland Rogers. And while this ensures he has access to the entire school, which he's entitled to under ADA and IDEA, it's so much more to our family. When I got the news that Brian would be attending Roland with his sister Ava, I cried real, huge, heavy tears. And I called my friends who had been on this journey with us since Brian was born. I cried because I knew he'd be at a school we loved so dearly and a school we've come to know so well. I cried because he would have the privilege of attending a school where so many already knew him. And most of all, I cried because I knew he'd be at the same school as his sister. His sister, who sat in the car seat next to him, as he turned blue. When
I hate to interrupt your 5 minutes, Rob.
Sorry, his sister, who sat in the car seat next to him, as he turned blue, went into cardiac arrest, died, and was revived just 3 years ago. You see, all the reasons I've spent these 5 minutes rattling off to you are very important to everyone in this room. But that last reason, that my children get the comfort, benefit, enrichment, and memories of being at the same school is priceless to my family in particular. My children deserve your very best, and your very best is not reconfiguration. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public?
My name is Lisa Dietzig, and I'm a Galloway resident and a member of a second grader at Roland, and I serve on the stakeholder committee. And while I mimic a lot of the thoughts that were just brought forth prior to me, a major concern that I have is how long the children are on the bus. And I live out pretty far away. My son is the first child on the bus in the morning and the last one off. He's picked up at 7:45 in the morning. He does not get home until 4:30 in the afternoon. And by switching to the reconfiguration, we were told that at the last meeting on May 6th that the buses could accommodate. They would pick up one school, we were talking about what students, if they live in the same neighborhood, they would pick up one school, drop off, and then go to another one. To me, that is not viable. I would think that would add a minimum half hour, probably an hour longer on the bus in each direction. So my question to the board is, what is the acceptable amount of time a child is on the bus?
We limit bus routes from the morning and the afternoon up to 1 hour is what we go by now. So looking at reconfiguration, that would be something that we would look at.
Right, so that would be viable by picking up 2 schools and dropping them off at 2 different locations. And I also feel that it would create more of a bottleneck because I believe a lot of parents will make other arrangements to not put the children on the bus and be driving them, and then the bottleneck at both schools are going to be that much greater because they're not going to be using the public transportation that our tax dollars are paying for. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public?
Good evening. My name is Matthew Shell. I live in Galloway Township. My wife, and you might know her until fitness. And we have 2 children, 3 and a 6-year-old, I believe. What she tells me. Kindergarten and preschool. So, I come basically just as an additional voice in community. The opinions tonight seem to be in favor of not having to, seem to be in favor of just adding what we need where we need it. If we need relocatables, add them where we need. If we need to renovate, do it where we need it. As opposed to rebranding the entire district, redrawing the lines everywhere, especially considering that the data from the last few years If you look at the slide, which slide? Well, I had the page over on my watch. The slide that the bar graph of what schools had the most kids in what grade. You know, next year, that's going to be totally different because those kids are going to move up to different grades. So in 5 years, when those kids are totally out of that school, you know, what will the stats look like then? You know, so is this a fix that we could do in time to solve the problem? Or will this sort of ebb and flood like a tide, where there's going to be some years and some periods where we have a problem with, you know, that schools will be a little tighter and populations will be a little higher, and other times it just simply won't be that high. So I think that's again works in favor of relocatables. If the problem is here, fix the problem here, instead of distributing the problem evenly across the board. That seems to be the public opinion. And that's basically the summation of what I wanted to say. You know, it's what the people seem to want. The projections, like you were saying, the projections, the original capacities for some of these rooms, you know, I was wondering where is the Jubilee property? I think that's the only question I had directly to the board. Other than that, it was simply, let's just spend the money just where we need it. Then you can focus the money more directly. You know, we don't have to worry about longer bus rides and, you know, spending money across the board. We can focus it. Instead of shining a flashlight on the entire problem, let's shine a laser right on, like where it's needed directly. That's it. Where is the Jimmy Lee's property? That's what we just want to know.
The property is located on Jimmy Lee's Road. You know where George Street cuts off?
Mm-hmm.
There.
Okay. And why is it being used?
Well, there has not been a need over the years to build a new school. If you're asking, you know, why that is a concern of the board, building a school, an elementary school, is $30 or more million, and that is not money that the board currently has in reserves. And having talked to board members about this, the concern is the economy in the community, the fact that we could not even get referendums passed to repair roofs, much less get a referendum for $30 million. I will say there are boards out there that ignore the public's opinion on taxes and just go and do things anyway, but that is not how this board operates, I'm pleased to say. They do listen to that public input, but it is really a concern in the economic climate of doing something that costs that much money. You know, obviously, everything costs something. Reconfiguration costs something. Additions cost something. And that's, again, where we're looking for the board to direct us to say, study this next. You mentioned doing additions, you know, shine that laser. I like that analogy. What would an addition cost? From our experience and casual discussions with the architect, it's a lot less than $30 million.
Yes, you know, good point. Thank you.
Hi everybody, I'm Danielle Cruz. I spoke last time, and I'm hoping to speak again very briefly. First of all, I wanted to say thank you to Julie and Galloway. I have two children who attend our schools now. One graduated now 6th grade with the middle school, and now is over at ACT. Both of my children attend Arthur Rand, so we are the quote-unquote affected school with all the space issues. And I can tell you as a member of the FSA and as a member of the parents, it's something you deal with. Just like at home, if you don't have enough room in the pantry, you figure it out. And although this was absolutely a needed study, I think that survey shows the sentiment of the parents, not just the argument, but all over. I am so grateful that you included this new slide that shows the sentiment of what we all feel. I went home with such knots in my stomach thinking about what this was going to do to my family, current fourth grader, current first grader. And I was concerned about the bus ride, and I was concerned about my involvement, my ability to be involved. And I started thinking to myself, why can't we just build an addition to the middle school? Why can't we use a temporary situation, relocatables, and then build onto the middle school?
create another team area. Right now at Arthur Grant, 6th grade already operates as a mini middle school within the building. They are tucked away, they switch classes, they use lockers. They are in essence a middle school inside of an elementary school. And so for me, I just felt like it was a better option. Listening to some of the parents, the one man who read the speech about the parent and involved in Roland, I literally sat back there with tears in my eyes when he talked about his children walking in side by side and hand in hand. I think about my 2 daughters who were bickering and arguing one of the mornings we missed the bus, and I drive them up to that building, and they are literally arguing until I open that man door, and then when they pile out and they walk right into the point, they are side by side. Because they're going into a world that they are loved and they feel secure, but also we are asking children to do intruder drills, fire drills, lockdown drills. They need that sense of security during these building block years. And the other thought I had was about during that 4th grade transition year, computer reconfiguration. That's a major year in elementary education, major testing year. And what would that do to our testing performance? We just got finished doing the slaw, or coleslaw, or SLAT, as they're calling it, all these different names. But what would that do to our 4th graders if they had to transition and then at the end of the year complete that assessment? So I just had all these thoughts, and I'm just so grateful that this sentiment was put out there, that you all now can see, it's not just a few of us who are willing to come up here to the microphone today, but you can see what the majority of the stakeholders feel. So fiscally, I don't know how you're going to figure it out, but we are hoping, as you can see, that you work with something different than a reconfiguration. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public who come up, state your name?
Hi, my name is Jade Sapad. I am a Galloway Township resident. I'm also a secretary for my career, and my son is a second grader. And just listening to what everyone has to say, and it seems that parents really want to do maybe the additions just where the need is. And I know that money is an issue, obviously. I was wondering, since there are those lands that it sounds like we're not going to be able to build them in the future, can we maybe sell all of them and get the money from that to maybe do the additions? I know it's easier said than done, but.
That is something we're looking into for the properties that we currently own. One of the things that we looked at with current appraisals are that 2 of the properties are not worth what we would have hoped maybe that it would be worth to really make a difference in what we need to do certain additions or building, but it is something that we are looking into and trying to consider as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Come up, state your name.
Hello, I'm Natalie McCollum, Galloway resident, 3 boys. Kindergarten, 2nd, and 4th. I teach in a very large district. I have taught in portable. I have taught in a classroom. I have taught on a cart. And being able to move around, our school no longer has the portables because the numbers decreased, so we were all able to fit inside. So as the years changed, we used the space that we needed when we needed it. I also, looking at it from a teaching standpoint, as a middle school teacher with 3 grades, by the time the kids get really comfortable, they're leaving. So to put kids in a school for 3 years, 4 years at a time, I think is a huge detriment to their ability, as we heard earlier, to feel secure and feel safe, to have their siblings friends. My oldest loved getting to see his friend's older brother. it was someone to look out for them and to be there. So when things happened, they had somebody to ask. When they had a new teacher, they could ask how that teacher was. So we would lose a lot of that by excluding them. And then as a parent, I love having them for the first time, all the same school, to the same function, to be able to participate, to take off on a day, to go to all of their functions so they're all at the same time. It's hard enough to coordinate all of that anyway, and have to imagine coordinating 2 or 3 different schools. I know it's going to happen when my oldest goes to high school, but I'd like to wait till then. So I think finding ways to make the space we have and add and decrease where we need to, and leave everybody as is, keep those back strong schools.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else from the public who will open it up? Hearing none, I'll close the public and we'll proceed with our agenda. You're welcome to stay for the balance of the school year.
Again, we want to thank everyone for coming. If you are welcome to stay, committee members in particular, I will be emailing you as things progress. Thank you, Mr. Days. The first item is the attorney's report, so I'll turn it over to Mrs. Bowell.
Good evening, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me over the rain. I apologize for my appearance today. I was outside function all day and really just came here for the rain meeting, so I apologize about that. But Dr. Jacobs was able to reach me on and off all day despite me being outside. So moving forward, I just have a really quick report. This month we're
have one item for action tonight, and that is to accept, modify, or reject the HIP report from May 6th. I'm sorry, presented report on May 6th.
Is there a motion, please, item number 2? Roll call.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Dr. Sherrill? Yes. Mrs. Avery? Ms. Goldberg? Yes. Mr. Graham? Mr. Nord?
Yes.
Dr. Clementer? And Vice President Dace?
Yes. Curriculum instruction.
Thank you. In this section, we have a revised date for the Smithville trip to Cape May Zoo, L Environmental Club to go to Reach Road, a physical therapy student intern from Arcadia University, and home instruction.
Questions, comments from the board? Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Roll call.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Mr. Nord?
Yes.
Mrs. Avery? Dr. Sherrill? Ms. Goldberg? Yes. Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Dr. Clementer? Yes. Vice President Dace?
Yes. Okay, finance and school operations.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to Ms. Nixon, our school business administrator.
The first item is the Finance Committee meeting update given by Chairperson John Moore.
We reviewed the bill list for tonight. There was only one minor question. We reviewed the financial reports that are all in order. The cash is equal to cash, and they're in balance. We talked about the transition in banking services because we're moving from Ocean First Bank to TD Bank on July 1st. Give or take. We also talked about getting an additional tax payment of $31,000 from the police athletic league. We talked about Schindler elevator, determined. We talked about the food service balances. We still have a lot of balances that are due to the school board. $9,000 right now. We went up more kids in the month before. We only have 2 more months, so hopefully everybody will cooperate and try to make their balances.
Thank you, Mr. Nord. I just to give a correction, the tax levy payment was received from the township, not police athletic. The next is to approve resolutions 1 through 7 for the monthly bills list and financial reports. Resolution 8 is to approve ed data for the 1920 school year. Resolution 9 is to approve additional hours for the master teacher. Resolution 10 and 11 are to approve contracts for the 1920 school year. And Resolution 12 is to approve non-fair student contracts for this current school year for amounts over $17,500. Resolution 13 and 14 is to approve McKinney-Vento tuition payable and tuition receivable students. Resolution 15 and 16 is to approve contracts for the 1920 school year. Resolution 17 is to accept a $1,000 donation for Arthur Grant Elementary School from the Hamilton Mall. And Resolution 18 is to approve a transportation contract with Prairie Harbor Regional School District.
Is there any comments from the board? Any comments from the public on the financial section? There is a motion to approve items number 1 through 18.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Mr. Nord?
Yes.
Mrs. Avery? Yes. Dr. Sherrill? Yes. Ms. Goldberg? Yes. Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Dr. Clementer? Yes. And Vice President Dace?
Yes.
Thank you. The next pages are for fiscal year reorganization items. On page 10 lists a number of appointments for the 1920 school year. Resolution 8 approves before and after school year program fees. Then the remaining approves additional appointments for the 1920 school year. Page 12 is continuing appointments of staff or professional services that we use currently and that we are reporting for the 1920 school year. Resolution 24 approves the signers for the financial accounts of the district. And Resolution 25 through 26
7, approve the custodian of records as well as the designated newspapers for purpose of advertising meetings. Resolution 28 is appointment of school physician for the next school year. Resolution 29 approves our medical, dental, prescription, and vision care insurance. Resolution 30 approves appointment of tax shelter annuity companies and annuity brokers. Resolution 32 is to approve the fiscal year 20 tuition rates set by the budget. Resolution 33 approves the chart of accounts. Resolution 34 approves the FSAs for each school. Resolution 35 approves the petty cash amounts for the different district departments. Resolution 36 approves the 1920 tax levy. Resolution 37 approves food service, food breakfast and lunch paid amounts and reduced amounts for elementary and middle school. Resolution 38 through 40 approve appointments for the 1920 school year.
Okay, are there any comments or questions from the board? Is there any public comment? Do we have a motion, please, for item, to approve item number 1 through 40?
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Goldberg? Yes. Mr. North?
Yes.
Mrs. Avery?
Yes.
Dr. Bashir Blah?
Yes.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Dr. Parmenter? Yes. And Vice President Davis?
Yes. Okay. Facilities maintenance?
Thank you. We have a second job conference for Arthur Grant Elementary School and Pomona Preschool new generators on Wednesday, June 3rd and I'm sorry, it says Wednesday and it should not. It's Monday, June 3rd at 1 p.m. Resolution 1 is to approve the 1920 facility applications to the Executive County Superintendent of Schools for the 1920 school year. And Resolution 2 is to approve disposal of surplus property.
Any questions, comments from the board? Is there any public comment? Do we have a motion to approve items 1 and 2?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Mrs. Avery? Yes. Dr. Bashir Blah?
Yes.
Ms. Goldberg? Yes. Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Mr. North?
Yes.
Dr. Parmenter? Yes. Vice President Davis?
Yes. Okay, community use of school facilities.
Thank you. For this meeting, we have items for PAL, Renegade Cheer, and the Raiders basketball.
Any questions, comments from the board? Is there any public comment? Do we have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Ms. Goldberg? Yes. Mrs. Avery?
Yes.
Dr. Bashir Blah? Mr. Graham? Mr. North?
Yes.
Dr. Parmenter? Yes. And Vice President Davis?
Yes. Okay, personnel.
Thank you. As always, when we have a retirement, I do read it verbatim. Resolution 1 is to accept with regret the letter of intent to retire from Patricia Yamaguchi, classroom assistant at Galloway Township Middle School, effective August 1st, 2019. Mrs. Yamaguchi has worked in the Galloway Township Public School District for 30 years, and her dedication and service to students and staff are appreciated by our entire school family.
Any questions, comments from the board? Any public comment? Do you have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, vote.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Mr. North?
Yes.
Mrs. Avery? Dr. Bashir Blah? Ms. Goldberg? Yes. Mr. Graham? Excuse me. Mr. Graham?
Yes.
Dr. Parmenter? And Vice President Davis?
Yes, with regret.
Thank you. Items 2 through 5 are family leave requests. Item 6 is to approve Dondre Dennis as a 7th grade science teacher for 1920. Resolution 7 is to approve Matthew Maxwell as an 8th grade science teacher for 1920. Resolution 8 is to approve Christopher Zellers as a 7th grade science teacher for 1920. Resolutions 9 and 10, 11, and 12 are to re-employ 12 and 10-month secretaries, food service personnel, and maintenance custodial for the 1920 school year. Resolution 13 approves Roseanne Cronk as a 10-month secretary. Resolution 14 is an additional substitute teacher. Resolution 15 is a summer substitute secretary, and Resolution 16 is substitute custodians for summer work.
Any questions or comments from the board? Is there any public comment? Do we have a motion, please, to approve items number 2 through 16?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Dr. Sherry Blau? Yes. Mrs. Avery? Yes. Ms. Goldberg? Yes. Mr. Grimm?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Dr. Clementer? Yes. And Vice President Davis?
Yes.
I am going to pause and ask Mrs. Junker, the middle school principal, to please introduce our new science teachers that are here this evening.
We are very excited, yet upset at the same time to lose 3 great science teachers, but we're bringing 3 great science teachers on board. Betty and I were part of an extensive interview process. I found 3 excellent candidates that you were all going to love. The first one, Chris Sellers, he did apologize. He had a medical issue this morning and is not able to be here. Matt Maxwell was here, but he just couldn't hold out long enough to stay. But if you saw him, he was here. He's been he started teaching science and technology in California, came back to New Jersey, is at Hamilton for the last year, and is excited to come to us and be a part of 8th grade curriculum and work with our robotics club next year, so we're very excited about that. But Dondre, he waited out, and that just shows you his dedication to the middle school. He started as a vaccine assistant this year. We were so happy to get him on board. He took on the basketball. You know he likes football. He's taken on the step and drill team. He helps out with Miss Lucas and has really helped and kind of just jumped right into the culture of the middle school. So we love that he's here, and you guys are going to be very proud of our
Yes, we had a policy meeting on May 6th, and I'll turn it over to Chairperson Gentile.
I set it forth in the administrative bulletin board to make a change with regard to events and ensuring that there's a Galloway officer as a security instead of the old policy provided for security guards. The board is undertaking to, the policy committee has begun to review the 9,000 section of the policy which deal with board governance, just to make sure it's all up to speed. That's all I got.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve, or is there any board comment? Any public comment? We have a motion to approve items 1 through 5.
Second.
Since this is first reading, we just
It just doesn't come into effect until Sunday.
Ms. Goldberg?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mrs. Avery? Yes. Dr. Sherry Blau? Yes. Mr. Gentile?
Yes.
Mr. Grimm? Dr. Clementer? Yes. And Vice President Davis?
Yes. Notice of public meetings.
Thank you. In June, we do have 2 regular meetings on the 10th and the 24th. Special events, you see our remaining spring concerts as well as our retirement reception, which is next Thursday. We also have the date and the times for the GTMS promotional ceremonies, as well as a pre-announcement of Frozen Junior for summer theater and the dates for that, as well as our summer class concert date.
The board members, please contact the superintendent to what nights you can, or what time you can do the graduation ceremonies. They give her a call so she can arrange it again.
Is there any public comment? Mark?
I'm Belinda Chester, and Galloway Vice President. I'm just my niece is that anytime. No. Okay. I'm requesting a closed session meeting with the Board of Education. For unnecessary and excessive restraint of a special needs child.
So, Mrs. Chester, the board does not discuss student matters in public. Typically,
That's why I'm asking for a closed
so
session.
typically, if you have a request, that request will go to the superintendent. The board's obligation is to first see if the superintendent can handle matters, and then if that's not resolved, then it would go to the Board of Education based on any policy that the board would have. If you
My
would like-
concern is this is ongoing. I understand what you're saying, but this is something that's not going to stop today unless it's handled now. So I have a deep concern about the way my child's being treated.
So the closed session is for the board, it's the board's closed session. Typically, the board does not have parents come into closed session unless there is a particular reason, such as harassment, intimidation, and bullying hearing, or a disciplinary matter. We can certainly note your request for the record, unless the board would like to entertain a discussion. And my understanding is that something typically that boards do not do is have parents come into executive session.
So the board is okay with excessive restraint of a kindergartner?
No, that's not what I just said. I did not just say the board is okay with any excessive restraint. What I said is that the board was not going to discuss any student matter in public. So
We're not
again,
asking for public, I'm asking for
and I'm telling you, but our practice is for executive session. My understanding is also that you did reach out to the superintendent, and the superintendent has, or is in the process of scheduling a meeting with you to discuss any concerns.
Okay, but I've also reached out to several other people, and this is an ongoing issue. This is not something that's just coming up today. This has been going on for weeks. I have requested some things that are being ignored. And at this point, again, I'm trying not to make my son's issues a public matter, but I have deep concerns that they're not being handled in a timely manner.
My suggestion would be if you wanted the board to hear something specifically, you could certainly put it in writing, address it to the board president, and that could be shared with the whole entire board.
So what happens to my child in the meantime?
So in the
That's
meantime,
my big issue.
Dr. Giaquinto has just heard what you have said, and my belief would be that she will be contacting you immediately to discuss any concerns you have, so they can be addressed immediately tomorrow.
Mrs. Chester, you sent me your availability this week. What I'm doing is reviewing my schedule to make an appointment as soon as possible with you. I just have to consider a number of things on my calendar that I cannot change. But when we were emailing earlier this evening, it was getting closer and closer to Finance Committee and this board meeting. So after this meeting, my intent is to give you some options for us to meet.
Okay, again, I'm going to repeat. It's a behavior, my child is being restrained the entire day. And that's not something acceptable, even again tomorrow. I mean, it's excessive restraint and it's unacceptable.
Mrs. Chester.
Mrs. Chester, again, I think we've noted your concerns for the record. I will also say that the district has a restraint policy, and although I'm not going to discuss your child particularly because we don't discuss children in public, I would say to look at that policy because if restraints do happen, I'm not talking about your child specifically, there are protocols and there are things that take place such as notice provisions and the like. But what I did hear was Dr. Giaquinto will be getting back in touch with you later tonight. In addition, she has heard what you have said. She is aware of where your child goes to school, and she will make sure tomorrow morning that any concerns are addressed. Did I say that correctly, Dr. Giaquinto?
That's correct.
Speak on your behalf.
Okay.
The board can certainly, as I said, if you want to have that discussion, you can. My recommendation is you should go with your practice bill that you typically do.
Okay.
Is there any other public comment? Is there any old business from the board? Any new business? That board members?
I have nothing, thank you.
I just want to say that I stopped by the color line,
Yeah.
and it was a great turnout, so I was very happy.
Good morning.
Yes, I'd like to welcome Olivia. Thank you very much for all you do for the community. I attended the jazz concert last week. It was really outstanding musicians there from throughout the district, and actually the band was here also. So, most of which are our students. That was a great thing. I also want to thank the board members who were present when Sherry and I got an award at the school, got awards at the at, if we're gonna go the relocatable route, we have to have a plan of how we're gonna take care of that in 2 years. If that says we're gonna, put additions at a couple of schools, we can't, I don't think, afford an addition at every school. We need to look where the most optimal, and, we just need more study before, we can have a definitive plan.
My apologies for being tardy, but I had a meeting before this meeting that ran over.
Mr. Grant, nothing? I also would like to welcome Olivia to our board meeting. And I also attended the color run last week, well attended, and I understand they raised a couple dollars. Okay, and I also attended the Golden Rogers concert this Thursday, was it? I think it was last Thursday night.
I think it was Thursday.
I attended the academic awards at 5 o'clock and a band concert at 6:30. And they did a wonderful job, and I hate to see Mr. Brown now retire. He's done a wonderful job of being the kids, whoever it's going. Sure, executive session tonight.
Yes, we need a motion to go into executive session, and the purpose of that is for negotiations and personnel and attorney-client communication. And that executive session should be approximately, what do you think, Dr. Bishop? 30 minutes. And action is not anticipated.
No, it is not.
We have a motion to go into closed session.